Since we did get chapter 8 on Instagram, we are going to hop on over to chapter 9. And I will read through page 19. And then at that point, when we shift focus onto a different character, it will be Michelle again. All right, chapter 9. March 24th, Roswell, New Mexico. Max took a bite out of his hamburger. He felt guilty eating. He should have been out looking for Michael, but he hadn't eaten all day. As Liz pointed out, he needed to keep up his strength. What she didn't say was he needed to keep it up in case he had to use it. Sheriff Valenti had gone home to see if he could call in some favors and find out more about the reporter. Alex had decided to go to the high school, which was one of the few places no one had checked. Kyle had gone with his father. Tess wanted to stay with Max. Liz had seemed annoyed when she heard that, but she hadn't said anything. They weren't together anymore, and it was her choice. Her gaze still met his at the most inopportune moments, and he felt like he could see right through her. See through her and no longer understand her. He still felt the pull between them. He knew she did too, yet she insisted they stay apart. Sometimes it made sense to him, especially when he thought about his destiny, about the Granolith, and all that had happened in the past 2 years. But sometimes it made no sense at all. Being in love was easy. The two people who loved each other had to be together. It was hard to realize that life didn't work that way. Maria was still sitting in the booth, using her cell phone. She was calling everyone she knew and everyone Michael knew, hoping they had seen him. She had reached her mother first, hoping that for some reason Michael was there. He wasn't, of course, and her weird cousin Sean had volunteered to help. Marie had turned him down, saying he was quite the screw-up and she didn't want his help. Surprisingly, it had been Liz who had argued with her. Liz, whom he had caught tickling and goofing with Sean some time ago. She was attracted to him. Max knew that as clearly as he knew his own name. Not that he had any say in it. They weren't a couple. It seemed like he had to remind himself of that every few minutes, just so that he could believe it. Max! He turned. Isabel was coming towards him, a look of panic on her face. The other customers stared at her. Liz and Maria hurried to her side. Tess stayed beside Max, saying nothing. Max didn't move. Isabel had gone to get something to Michael so that they would get a sense of him. Maybe she knew something. And with that expression on her face, whatever it was couldn't be good. Come sit down, Isabel, he said. She didn't pay much attention to Liz or Maria. Her entire gaze was for him. Max, she said as she sat beside him. Do you know this reporter in town? Yes, she was here a little while ago. Isabel set a business card next to the Tabasco bottle. She wants to talk with you, Max. She knows you were in Phoenix for Christmas. He felt all those muscles in his back tense. How does she know that? She wouldn't tell me, but she knew that you were in that children's ward, and she knew the kids got better. I knew something was up with her, Tess said softly beside him. Maria and Liz flanked him. She wants to talk with you, Isabel said. She thinks you're involved in some kind of drug-dealing scam. Max? Liz gave a half laugh of surprise. Max is the last person who would ever deal drugs. Isabel shook her head. Someone is. They're claiming credit for saving the kids and selling some fake drug, saying it was the reason the kids got better. What? The news seemed to bring Maria out of her funk. Of all the low-down, nasty, creepy things to do. Are they selling this drug saying it'll make other kids better? Liz asked. I guess so, Isabel said. At least that's what I understood. Max felt the fury run through him. He hadn't felt anything like this since the afternoon he faced the Skins. He pushed his plate away, took a deep breath to keep control of himself, and made sure he could sound calm before he spoke. What does she want from me? I don't know, Isabel said. She just wants to talk with you. What did you tell her? Nothing, Isabel said. I just listened. She apparently didn't care if I responded or not. Where did you see her? Tess asked. At the house, Isabel said. She knows where we live? She hadn't seemed like that much of a threat when Max had seen her. I guess so. Isabel pushed a strand of hair out of her face. I guess she was waiting for one of us. She parked in front of me when she saw me. Good thing she didn't see Mom and Dad first, Max said. Yeah, Isabel said. Mom talked about that miracle for nearly a week. It was Christmas after all. Max kept his voice dry. He'd hated listening to his mother go on and on about a real miracle. He'd wanted to confide in her so much, and he had been unable to. This past Christmas had been the hardest holiday of his life. Tess put her hand on his shoulder. It was meant as a gesture of support, but it made him uncomfortable. He saw Liz's eyes flash and had to look away. Did she know Michael was there too? Max made sure he spoke so softly that no one outside the group could hear him. I don't know, Isabel said. The conversation was pretty short. This can't be a coincidence. Maria's voice carried more than Max wanted it to. Maybe she knows where Michael is. Reporters don't kidnap people, Tess said. I didn't say that. Maria wasn't even pretending to be civil to anyone anymore. I said maybe she knows where he is. You know, Liz said in that considered way of hers. Maybe Michael found out. Maybe Michael found out about the scam, and he went off to do something about it. Isabel turned toward Liz. It was plain they both believed this was a possibility. Max frowned. It was a possibility. That would be so unlike him, Maria said, with a mixture of pride and exploration. Running off without telling anyone, trying to be the hero. We don't know what happened, Max said gently. But this is likely, Max, Maria said. It's the first thing. It is. Max shook his head. But it doesn't feel right. How would he have found out in the 3 hours between the times I last saw him and you first called? I don't know. Maybe someone came to see him. Maria crossed her arms. Like that reporter, Isabel said. Maybe she saw him last night. And he just ran off without calling anyone? Max looked at all of them. They were watching him intently. He didn't call me or you, Maria, even though he knew you were waiting for him. Or you, Isabel? Whenever he feels he can't confide in me, he at least tells you. Maybe he didn't have time, she said. Maybe he just had to go. And why would that be? Max asked. What would be the hurry? I don't know. Isabel stood up quickly. He recognized the move. She did that when she was irritated with him. It just seems like something Michael would do. Max didn't agree. Michael would come to him. The only time Michael went off on his own was when he was really angry with Max, and they had a pleasant afternoon together talking basketball. It was like old times. Michael would have called. Maybe you should see the reporter, Liz said. Everyone turned towards her. You've got to be kidding, Tess said. Liz shook her head. I'm not kidding. It sounds like she knows stuff we don't. Maybe Max can find out what's really going on. And maybe she'll ask the wrong questions. Or maybe she's not a reporter at all, Isabel said. She's a reporter, Tess said. She used some newspaper credentials for her hotel room. If she asks the wrong questions, Max said, I just won't answer. Oh, like that will work. Isabel sighed. She's probably already suspicious because I didn't deny your involvement. I couldn't think of what to say. I figured if I said anything, I'd put us all in trouble. And that's what'll happen if you go see her, Max. I can handle myself. You don't know that. You don't know who or what she is. Isabel took his hand. Michael's already missing. I don't want anything to happen to you, too. Liz's eyes seemed to get bigger. Maria was watching both of them, but it was Tess who spoke. You're going to go, aren't you? Yes, Max said. He wondered how she could read him so clearly. She'd been able to since they'd met. Then I'll go with you, she said. What purpose will that serve? Maria asked. This time it was clear to Max that she was asking the question for Liz. If the reporter asks the wrong question and Max gives the wrong answer, maybe I can muddy things up a bit. Tess was talking about her power, the way that she made people believe they saw something or heard something that didn't really happen. Can you do that after the fact? Isabel asked. Not exactly, but I can be pretty creative. All right then, Max said. I'll go, and Tess will come with me. And what about the rest of us? Maria asked. I can't stay in this diner any longer. I have to do something. We can't go all see that reporter, Isabel said. That would make her suspicious. I wasn't really thinking about that reporter, Maria said. I was thinking about Michael. What do we do about Michael? Isabel held up a neck chain that Max recognized. Michael had worn it for a while, years ago, and then it broke. Isabel had promised to fix it, but apparently she hadn't gotten around to it. Maybe we can focus on him and get a sense of him. Maria shook her head. I've got to act, Isabel. I can't use my non-existent powers. What I do well is talk and move. That's about it. You sing pretty well, Liz said. You know what I mean, Maria said. I do. Liz wiped her hands on her uniform. I'm going to see if I can get the rest of the shift off. Then we'll go to Michael's place. The sheriff's already been there, Tess said. Yes, but he's not familiar with it, Liz said. We are. We can see if anything's out of place. Everything's out of place, Isabel said. They would argue all day if they weren't careful. I think it's a good idea, Max said. The more things we try, the better chance we have of finding him. He should have turned up by now, Maria said, her gaze meeting Max's. Yes, Max said. He should have. That's why I think we should do everything we can to find him. We all know that something's wrong. We just have to find out what. Isabel threaded her hands through her hair. Do you guys ever have the feeling that everything is going to change? By summer, we're not even going to recognize ourselves and our lives. Don't talk like that, Isabel, Max said. She didn't look at him. I do. I have a feeling that we are going to want to go through the spring, that we'll look back on the winter and wish it was still here. Isabel, this isn't helping, Max said. She was actually scaring him. Yeah, Liz said. I feel that way sometimes. Me too, Maria said. Great, Tess said. Now that we're all depressed, can we get out of here? She looked at Max. His stomach turned. The hamburger wasn't sitting well. Isabel was right. Things were changing in ways he couldn't see yet, but somehow he had a feeling the upcoming changes had nothing to do with Michael's disappearance. Max had a growing sense that Michael's disappearance was rooted in the past, and Isabel's feelings had their place in the future. We'll find you guys, Max said, and stood. He led Tess out of the crash down before anyone could protest, before he could change his mind. Nothing. Maria flopped on Michael's couch, and then winced when the broken spring scraped her leg. There's nothing here. I can't believe how messy this place is. Isabel stood in the kitchen, her nose wrinkled. The smell was pretty incredible. After a few days, leftover pizza took on a life of its own. I don't know what we expected to find anyway, Liz said. She changed out of her uniform into the camisole t-shirt and jeans she had worn that morning. We looked earlier. I know. Maria leaned her head back on the couch. The musty smell of old fabric enveloped her. She was so glad she wasn't allergic to dust. I just feel like we should be doing something, and I don't know what to do. You think something bad's happened to him, don't you? Isabel said. Don't you? Maria turned slightly. You're the one who keeps saying we should focus on him. Yeah. Liz leaned against the kitchen counter. What does that mean exactly? I don't know. Isabel opened a drawer, then another, and another. Doesn't he have garbage bags? Michael, Maria asked. Are you kidding? Then what does he do? Uses paper bags under the sink? Maria said. Isabel opened the sink cabinet and pulled out one of those bags, neatly folded, probably the only neatly folded item in the entire apartment. She shook it open and started to stuff pizza boxes inside. What does it mean? Maria asked. What does what mean? Isabel asked. The stench was growing. Obviously, some of these pizza boxes had lived on the kitchen counter for a long time. That we should focus on them, Maria said. Isabel sighed. She set aside one full bag and reached for another. Isabel, Liz caught her arm. You had something in mind. Yeah, Isabel said, wrenching her arm away. But it isn't working. What isn't working? Maria asked. Isabel washed her hands and looked around for a towel. When she didn't find one, where did she think she was anyway? She wiped her hands on her jeans. Remember when Michael's granddaughter, or whatever you wanted to call her, was trapped in the woods? Yeah, Maria would never forget that. The days she'd spent with Michael at his real family's estate that had made her understand him even more. I kept dreaming about her and getting flashes of her, remember? I do, Liz said, nodding. And when Tess was trapped in the old power plant, I kept seeing her. Maria remembered that, how pale Isabel had gotten at her birthday party, how bad those headaches were, and how lost she seemed. Isabel's gaze met Maria's. I'm not getting any of that from Michael. Isabel's words were soft, but they sent a chill through Maria. You can't be thinking that, Maria said. Thinking what? Liz looked at both of them. He's not dead, Maria said. But I should have a sense of him, Isabel said. Wait. Liz stood between them. I thought Tess sent you the images of where she was trapped. She did, but and the others came to you in a dream, right? Most of the time, although I always had the sense it was happening, that it was true. So what's the problem, Maria asked. Maybe you just can't sense Michael. Isabel shook her head. Michael and I have always been really close, brother and sister close, almost as close as me and Max. I know that, Maria said, and heard the defensiveness in her voice. So I should get a sense of him. I should know where he is and what's going on. It doesn't work like that, Liz said. Isabel turned towards her. He should let me know. He should send something to me. He doesn't have Tessa's powers, Maria stood. She was beginning to understand what was going on. Isabel was upset as she was, only she'd been hiding it under that cool exterior. But we're close, I should know. Maria nodded. So should I. You didn't know what happened to Max when they took him to the White Room, Liz said. But I found him, Isabel said. With some dedicated dreaming. Liz took her arm and pulled her out of the kitchen. You're even closer to Max than you are to Michael, and you didn't even know about him. Maria felt the shiver run through her. Can you do the dream walking with Michael? I can try, Isabel said, but you think I would have gotten something last night if he was in trouble. Maybe he's not, Liz said. Maybe he's off investigating that scam. Isabel shook her head. He would have let us know by now. Michael's not always considerate, Maria said, aware that she had made the same argument Isabel was making just a little while ago. Isabel threaded her fingers together. I just have no sense of him at all. It really worries me. What about the dream walking? Liz asked again. She seemed to be the only calm one in the room. Yeah, Maria said. It's worked before. Isabel nodded. Let's do it. Right here? Maria asked. Yes, Isabel said. I'd get a better sense of him here. I'd get a better sense of him then. Wait, Liz said. If you get in trouble, neither Maria nor I can help you. You need Max here before you start. We can try it, Maria said. She wanted to get this going right now. The sooner they found Michael, the sooner she could rest. No, Liz said, her tone firm. It's not safe. She's right, Isabel said. We have to have either Max or Tess here. We don't know what Michael's dealing with. Sometimes the dream images are really powerful. She shuddered. Maria wondered what she was remembering. And since we don't know, the best thing to do is make sure someone can help me. Maria sighed. Okay, well, they'll come here after they meet with that reporter, which shouldn't take too long, Liz said. But what do we do while we wait? Isabel asked. All three of them looked at each other. I think I have garbage bags in the car, Maria said. Great, Isabel said. You think he has a vacuum around here? All three of them looked at each other and then spontaneously burst into laughter. Michael with a vacuum cleaner was too strange an image. It was the very first laugh of the day. It felt good, but it also felt like a betrayal. Maria didn't want to enjoy herself when Michael could be in trouble. She didn't want to do anything except bring him home.
Nyla set her purse down on the bed. She checked the phone for messages. She had none. The cell phone hadn't rung either. She pushed back one of the chairs near the window and sat down. Her laptop was still open on the table, the morning's newspaper spread on the other side. Between her and the window was a heating unit, and outside, a view of the parking lot followed by lots of scrub. Why would anyone stay in this place? Or better yet, why would anyone move here? That was one of the many questions she'd wanted to ask Brody Davis, and she hadn't been able to. He had led her into the UFO Center, and he had shown her at the back. He had a lot of equipment here, most of which she didn't get a good peek at. Instead, he'd take her into a part of the UFO Center that had floor-to-ceiling pictures of the 1947 crash and a scale model replica of the supposed spaceship hanging from the ceiling. It felt creepy sitting there, but Nyla didn't let on. She didn't want Brody to know that he could unnerve her. She had asked him a few perfunctory questions that he had answered while looking nervously over his shoulder. Then he'd asked about his daughter, Sydney, and he had held up his hand to stop her. I told you, he said, we're going to respect Sydney's privacy. Nyla had nodded before. I'm not going to use her name, just like I'd said before. He didn't relax, but his gaze met hers for the first time. She had the very real sense that he was afraid of her. Then what do you want to know? What was her prognosis last night? You had her in the airlift. What was her prognosis the night you had her airlifted to Phoenix? Critical, he said. What was wrong? They told me she had an incurable form of childhood leukemia. I didn't think she'd see another Christmas. Like all parents she'd talked with, he was in the matter-of-fact manner. He hadn't come to terms with it exactly, but it had been part of his life, and nothing could change that. What happened in the hospital? I don't know, he said. I wasn't in the room. Nyla realized at that point that she would have to take the interview slowly. So what's her prognosis now? She's cured. The disease is not in remission? No, it's gone. Then when did that change? You know when it did, he said. Tell me anyway. December 20th. What does Sydney say happened? She says an angel healed her. What do you say? I say I don't know. Nyla had a lot of questions prepared as follow-ups, and she knew some of them would offend Brody. Do you think that for Sydney, angels are a way of explaining something she doesn't understand? No matter how he answered that, she would have added, like aliens are for you. But after her meeting with Isabel Evans, Nyla decided to alienate Brody. She might need him for more deep background. So is she getting any further treatment? Nyla asked. No, Brody said. She's not sick anymore. Do you think I could talk with her? No, Brody said. He stood. The interview is over. I do have a few more questions, Nyla had said. No. And with that, Brody walked past. Nyla hadn't been too fazed. She'd had interviews like this before. The problem was they didn't leave her in a good position to request a follow-up, and she might need one, although she hadn't been planning on staying in Roswell longer than she had to. She sighed and tapped on the space bar on her laptop, making the dark screen light. Her notes were still open, which was fine. She had nothing to hide. But in the future, she'd be better off shutting down her laptop and putting it away whenever she left the hotel room. A knock on the door startled her. She hadn't given her room number to anyone, and whenever hotel staff knocked, they were supposed to identify themselves as they knocked. She went to the door and peered through a peephole. Max stood outside her room. Max stood outside her room. A short blonde whose face Nyla couldn't see stood beside him. Why is Tess there? Sorry. I'll stop. How did they find her? Had the front desk given out her room number? If so, she'd have a talk with them before she checked out. They probably didn't get many businesswomen traveling alone through this part of New Mexico, but such practices could lead to lawsuits if the wrong people got wind of the room number. She took a deep breath, steeling herself from the moment and the... Sorry, my crackers just dumped all over the floor. This is my life. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for the meeting and the attitude she'd have to show to get her information. Then she pulled the door open. Apparently, you spoke to your sister, Nyla said as she stepped aside. Yes. Max walked into the room, his entire body obviously tense. He seemed like he was on high alert. The girl with him was Tess. As she came inside, she gave Nyla a look of pure distaste. Nyla shut the door. I don't know if Isabel told you who I am. She showed me your card. Max turned around. He was taller than she was, and that, in combination with those eyes, don't we know it, made him seem very strong. Nyla felt uneasy for the first time she had come to Roswell. Nyla felt uneasy. I can't. Nyla felt uneasy for the first time since she had come to Roswell. Well then, she said, have a seat. We have much to discuss. We'll stand, Max said. He had the flat edge of an authority to it. His voice had that of a flat edge of authority to it. Tess stood beside him, the way a wife would stand beside her more famous spouse. What did you want to say to me? It'll take a moment, Max, Nyla said, deliberately using his first name. You and Tess would be more comfortable if you sat. We're fine. Tess used the same clipped tone that Max had. If Nyla hadn't read about Max and Liz in the guidance counselor's notes, she would have thought that Max and Tess were a couple of long standing. Can't even read it. All right. Nyla walked past them. When her back was to them, she winced. Already she had lost control of this interview. She closed her laptop and leaned against the heating unit. Fortunately, it was off. Her only other choice was to sit, and that would put her at even more of a disadvantage. Have you found your friend yet? She asked. Max's eyes widened slightly. She had surprised him. He had been bracing himself for another question. No. I'm sorry. I know you're all worried about him. Do you know anything about his disappearance? Tess asked as she took a step forward. Nyla smiled. This girl was a firecracker and a bit unpredictable. It was clear by Max's light touch to Tess's arm that he didn't approve of that question. No, I don't know anything about his disappearance, Nyla said, although I do know where he went on December 24th. Max had let his hand drop from Tess's arm, but he didn't say anything. Isabel had prepared him well. He was with you, Max, in Phoenix. He stood guard while you disappeared into the pediatric oncology ward and did whatever you did to those children. Max stared at her. His gaze made her uncomfortable. You were filmed, she said. I have your face and your friend Michael's on security video. How do you know what Michael looks like? Tess asked. Have you seen him? The implication was clear. The girl was accusing her of lying about the disappearance. I do a lot of research when I'm working on a story, Nyla said. I saw a picture of Michael in the local newspaper. Seems he got himself legal permission to handle his own affairs, even though he's underage. Sounds like your friend Michael has had a hard life. Max didn't take the bait. She wanted him to ask about Michael. Instead, Max asked, what story are you researching? I would have thought Isabel told you, Nyla said. You did get to my room awfully fast. Isabel said you made a threat. And it's your job to defend the world against threats? Nyla asked, intrigued. Against me, Max said. And that upsets you. What upsets me, he said slowly with great emphasis, is that someone blocked my sister in our driveway and then threatened her. The content of the threat doesn't matter. The action does. If you have a problem with me, you come to me. How old was this kid? He didn't say that the way a teenager would, all bravado and machismo. He said it flatly, the way a 40-year-old man with great power would. the way someone would if he knew he could squash his opponent like a bug, but really preferred not to. All right, Nyla said, and pushed herself off the heater. Let me take this step by step. It's a federal offense to sell illegal drugs. What? Tess asked. Max caught her arm again and pulled her close, almost as if he were holding her back. The offense is compounded when any transaction to deal with these drugs happens through the mail. If cash, for example, is sent from New Mexico to Arizona, then the offense is compounded a third time because the criminals have now crossed state lines. Are you with me, Max? Max shook his head. I have no idea what you're talking about. The serum, she said, the stuff you use to heal the kids. Did you know someone is selling it over the internet? Max looked stunned. What serum? Nyla had expected him to deny knowing of the internet sales, but she hadn't expected him to deny the serum. He didn't seem to be scamming her, although she knew some people were really good at covering how they felt and what they thought. Instead of giving him a direct answer, she grabbed her laptop and opened one of her files. She swung the machine so that the screen faced Max and Tess. Tess's eyes grew wide as she read. Max's face got pale. Nyla knew what they were reading almost by heart. The website started out with a banner ad for the serum. Then it had a lot of information for sick children and their parents. The Christmas Miracle was halfway down the page, cited as an example of the way that researchers had tried to show the world how their serum worked and why they should not be denied legal sales in the United States. Where did this come from? Max asked. I was hoping you could tell me. Nyla set the laptop down. Tess went toward it, sat in a chair, and continued reading. Nyla kept an eye on her. She didn't want Tess to get into her other files. I know nothing about this, Max said. Yet you know what happened in the hospital, Nyla said. Max was silent. She recognized the silence. It was, in its own way, a victory. If he didn't know, he would deny the exact same way he had when she had mentioned the serum. The fact that he hadn't denied was intriguing. She would wager he was trying not to lie to her. Max had integrity, or he thought he did. Or he was trying to convince her that he did. He certainly was smart enough. Maybe he had been surprised by the sale of the serum. Maybe he would go back to the crash down or to that nice house of his family's and call the researchers asking them for a cut. As composed as this kid was, Nyla wouldn't put anything past him. I've come close to these guys twice, she said, deciding to trade information for trust. It was a risk. If Max was involved with scam artists, they would learn she was on their trail. Of course, it wasn't much of a risk since they probably knew it anyway after her meeting with Isabel. Tess was still reading the screen. The file was still on the serum. I found their post office box. Not that it was hard. All I had to do was send them a sob story about a sick child. I saw the man who picked up the mail. He was the suspicious sort. Though I had to tail him from some distance, I had lost him. Max was staring at her so intently that she felt uncomfortable. To hide the feeling, she returned to her perch on the heating unit. So I went back to the post office a few days later and waited in my car. Sure enough, he showed up again and left carrying packages. I assumed those packages contained cash. I followed him again, and this time I was able to stay with him. Max moved just slightly. She took that for interest. Tess had clicked open a new file. As the file opened, Nyla grabbed the laptop and closed the lid. Nope, she said to Tess. The rest of the stuff on this machine is private. Sorry, Tess said in a tone that said she wasn't sorry at all. She pushed her chair back and rested in it, watching Nyla through thick eyelashes. Anyway, Nyla said, I tracked him to a place just outside of Florence Junction. He turned off on a dirt road that looked like it didn't get a lot of use. I couldn't follow him down that, so I didn't even try. But I'll figure out a way to get there. It won't be hard. Max blinked, glanced at Tess, who gave him a small, elegant shrug. Nyla had no idea what they were communicating about. Telling her that they knew something about this? Working with her? Concern? She supposed she would find out soon enough. These guys are good, Nyla said. The police haven't gotten the serum, but mostly because they haven't got any complaints about it. They can't move on these guys until they know for sure they aren't selling sugar water through the mail. That would be fraud, Tess said. Fraud and drug trafficking are two different things, Nyla said. Tess leaned back further, not taking her gaze from Nyla. You could order this stuff. You have the address. But not 15,000, Nyla said, although I have considered it. But, Max asked. Nyla smiled. That's where you come in. I don't understand, Max said. I think you do, she said. Well, I don't. Tess stood up and put her hands into her back pockets. Explain it to me. Nyla didn't look at her. Her concentration was on the smart, powerful, and young Max Evans. You're involved in this. The police have studied that hospital security video 100 times. They have no idea who you are, but I do. Max's gaze narrowed. Tess walked to his side. Nyla felt a prickle of unease. She didn't let it show. I'll give you to them unless you help me, she said. I know that. Help you how? Max asked. I know the serum sold on that site is a scam. I want proof. I want the men who are conducting it. If you help me get them, I'll make sure no one ever knows you were involved. Until your article comes out, Tess said. Nyla shook her head. Not even then. Why should we trust you? Tess asked. Max put his hand on her shoulder. Tess looked at him, and then she frowned. Apparently she didn't like what she saw in his eyes. I'll do it, he said. Max, Tess said, her tone a warning. Good, Nyla said. Will you be here later tonight? Max asked. Yes, Nyla said. I'll talk to you then. With that, he took Tess by the arm and led her from the room. She glanced over her shoulder once, and another shiver ran through Nyla. What was it about that girl that made Nyla feel she could kill with a single look? The door closed behind them, and Nyla let out a small breath. Then she cursed. She hurried to the door, but Max and Tess were already gone. She should have gotten his help while he was here. She could have taken that extra step, and she hadn't. From the moment he'd entered the room, Max had controlled the meeting. Nyla had been around charisma before, but she had never fallen victim to it, until now. It would be just her luck that he would warn the scam artists, or try to take them on himself. She cursed again. Now that it was her turn to trust him, she didn't like the feeling. She didn't like it at all.
Chapter 10, March 24th, Lawrence Junction, Arizona. Jerry entered the dining room, still wiping his hands with the hand towel. Whoever had first called money filthy lucre was right. His hands had an oily feel when he and Dane had finished counting. Money always felt odd to Jerry, cash in particular, as if just by touching it, he was touching all the hands the money had passed through. It reminded him how transient the stuff was. Cash could be spent without a trace, at least as far as the cops were concerned, but the trace was there. Fingerprints, grease, cooking oil, even blood. If the substance was on someone's fingers when they touched a bill, the substance was on the paper. And then it transferred to Jerry's hands. He shivered and wiped his hands again. He'd already washed them 3 times. The first time Dane had seen him do that, Dane had laughed. Who are you, Judas? Can't get the bloody feel of those 30 pieces of silver off your hands? The comment was more accurate than Jerry would have liked. Part of this scam made him feel really guilty, the part that had to do with the kids. Sure, the parents were victims of their own desperation, but the kids were the real victims here, of the malfunctioning of their own bodies, of a medical system that didn't find answers quickly enough, of parents who believed in miracles. Jerry wouldn't have been able to handle this scam year after year. The 3 months he and Dane had been doing it already seemed too long. In the past, Jerry's scams had all been geared towards suckers. He firmly believed the P.T. Barnum maxim that there was one born every minute, and like Barnum, he planned to take advantage of all those brain-dead folks. When Jerry had seen the so-called Christmas miracle on TV, he knew he had something he could use, and when no one came forward to claim credit, he was positive he could use it. He didn't think of the implications for the kids until later, until the first package of filthy lucre had come through the door. By then, it was too late. He trusted Dane, he really did, but he trusted Dane to be consistent. And the one thing he knew Dane hated most in this world was to be disappointed by his friends. Jerry had set up a scam that worked. They had actual money in their hands with the promise of more. It was a simple plan, one that took almost no effort on their part. If Jerry backed out, Dane would have seen that as a disappointment, a personal affront committed by a friend. The last time one of Dane's friends had disappointed him, the friend had received a homemade knife in the belly and hadn't lived. Jerry had to see this scam through, for his own sake. Thank heavens it was nearly done. He set the towel on the dining room table and sat down at the computer. The little envelope icon on the bar was blinking. He had mail. The kitchen door opened and Dane came out. He was carrying a styrofoam cooler. I swear, he said with a grin, this is the best stuff I've ever made. It even tastes good. And I bet there's enough alcohol in here from the various cough syrups to give the kids a good buzz before they go to sleep. They don't need a buzz, Dane, Jerry said. He wished Dane would stop tampering with the stuff. They had a product that worked. Jerry was secretly afraid that some of those cough medicines wouldn't go together, or something new that Dane would put into the mixture would cause some kind of allergic reaction in one of those already sick kids. So far, it hadn't happened. Or at least if it had, no one had blamed the medication. They had blamed whatever disease had killed the kid. The secret is Caro syrup, Dane said. It's thicker and sweeter now. Kids will love it. They're not supposed to love it, Jerry said, clicking on his mail program. Medicine is supposed to be nasty. Dane rested the ice chest on the edge of the dining room table. What got up your butt? The feel of the money against his hands, money made from sick kids. Jerry had to bury those thoughts, just like he had been doing. At least he told parents to continue getting regular medical care for their kids. The serum wouldn't make the kids well, but it wouldn't hurt them either, so far as he knew. He was really over his head in this one. Best plan he'd ever come up with, and he didn't have the balls for it. Hell, he didn't even have the balls to admit that to his partner. Jerry? Dane asked. Nothing, Jerry said. Nothing's up. I'm just tired, is all, and ready to get out of this hellhole. Yeah, me too, but it won't take too long, and we'll be saying adios, amigos. Not a moment too soon. Jerry downloaded his mail. While he was doing that, he opened the letters that he'd left unread in the box. So we ready? Dane asked. Let me check. Jerry scanned the return address until he saw the one he was looking for. Yep, we've got an okay from our latest. Good, Dane said. The Gas Mart, I hope. The Gas Mart at the junction of Interstate 10 and State Highway 80 was Dane's favorite drop spot because there was the Pie and Stuff diner across the street. Dane had a thing going on with one of the waitresses, and he didn't think Jerry knew about it. But Jerry kept his eye on Dane. That was the problem with having partners. They always threw a monkey wrench into the works, and never in the way that Jerry expected. So he learned over the years to be vigilant. Sometimes he could stop a problem before it started. Yes, he said, the Gas Mart. Excellent, Dane said, grinning. Jerry did not grin back. You better get going. I want you there at least 3 hours ahead, making sure there are no cops. You got it, Dane said, taking the small cooler and heading for the door, whistling an old Jerry Reed tune. Hey, Dane, Jerry said. Yeah? Dane turns slightly. Do the waitress after the drop, okay? Dane grinned. We ain't done nothing yet, Jer. I don't want you to forget to watch your back. Dane's grin faded. I've never forgotten that, Jer. In fact, it's something I never forget. So it was out in the open, the lack of trust between them. Jerry could comment on Dane's actions, on his own discomfort, but he didn't think there was a point. Not yet. I'm glad you don't forget, Jerry said. Good luck with this one. You think I'll need it? Dane asked. I think the more we do this, the more luck we need, Jerry said. I'm glad we're almost at our target. Jane shifted the ice chest. Me too, partner. Me too. And that is chapter 10. We will be doing 11 and 12 on Sunday this week instead of Friday because of my schedule. So, yeah. All right. I guess we will do the recap with Jess.
Yay.
And everyone can ask questions if they want.
How you guys liking this book better than the other one? Do you like it more?
I like it more.
I do too. I think there's a lot more dialogue and there's a lot more, we get more action and we get more everybody. We don't really get a lot of Kyle in this one. He's kind of quiet in this one, but yeah, I like it a lot better than the other one. The other one was good, but I had my problems with it, as you all know.
I can like really see it, like Joanna was saying, like it would have made a good episode, like the way that they talk and their movements and motions and everything.
I feel like after the first one came out, they knew what their mistakes were, so they changed it, because from here on, you get a lot more of that. You get more dialogue, you get more interaction, like what we're used to in the show. So I'm wondering if they took that feedback and said, yeah, we need to fix these things. So, and you can tell where the episodes are. They say little things that happen in the show that you can point out, so you can see where the timeline is a lot better than the other one, which I like.
I do like the way this book is, it's definitely written better. Yeah. There's not as many words I'm tripping over, which I appreciate, because that first book was a handful. So.
Yeah, there was too many words, too many long words. Even when I was reading the book, I was like, oh my God.
I know it's supposed to be for a teenager.
I'll just skip that word and make up a word and put it in its place.
Sometimes you can just take out those really hard to say words, and it makes sense without that complicated word, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like I'm talking up to this
I
guy.
think they did, like, threw a lot of words in the first book just to, like, jazz it up or make it, like, fancy, and they really didn't need to do that. Like, these are teenagers who are supposedly reading these books, so you don't need to do that.
Yeah.
Perhaps they just didn't realize they weren't catering to teenagers, you know, in their first book.
Yeah. Maybe they were just in a hurry to get it written and published.
Sorry, my connection cut out on me.
That's okay, Allie. I'm glad you're here.
Issues, but I enjoyed what I did see.
Yeah, I already have people asking about the YouTube channel, so we're gonna start working on that.
Oh, good.
As soon as we can, because I have people that are like, I want it up.
I mean, it's crazy. I only uploaded the first 9 chapters to, like, the Facebook group, and I didn't get around to doing the other ones. And then we started having all these Instagram issues, and I was like, well, you know what? Let's just put it in one universal place. There's no point, because not everyone's on Facebook, not everyone's on Instagram, not everyone is, you know, on Twitter or whatever. So YouTube
I think
is
we'll
a
get
little
more
bit more
hits.
universal platform.
Right.